And Karl Rove joins us. Good evening, Karl.
Good evening, Greta.
Pass the buck presidency. A lot of people think, of course, the other night the president said it was the intel community. Certainly he has said that a lot of the problems we have are from the previous administration, one you worked in. Is this getting him deeper into trouble? Passing the buck.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's getting him deeper into trouble from two perspectives. First of all, he's 6 years into his presidency. It might have been able to skate by saying in 2009 and 2010, look, it's Bush's fault. But he can't get away with saying it's somebody else's fault when you're 6 years into the presidency. The second thing is that the president doesn't seem to understand that he can get bigger. He looks stronger if he takes responsibility on himself. What would have happened on Sunday night if, rather than throwing Clapper under the bus, if the president said, look, that's not really the important question. That's not the important consideration. I'm the commander-in-chief, and it was my responsibility, and it was my mistake in failing to recognize this, and that's why we've changed course, and we're moving in a direction with a new strategy. You've got to be able to do that if you're president. Otherwise, what you're going to be constantly doing is diminishing yourself rather than, ironically enough, making yourself bigger by taking on your shoulders responsibility.
I'll tell you what I think is distressing, is something where he needs to build more confidence up, at least with me, and that's that he's on top of the information. The fact that he seems not to know much about what was going on with ISIS, and he blames the intelligence. And of course, you can go back to this article that I posted on Greta Wire, where Senator McCain and Lindsey Graham do lay out exactly what's going on. They talk about spreading ISIS, recruiting. Then you go back to Fast and Furious, and he says he learned about it in the media. Then you go back to the IRS. He says he learned about it in the media. Jay Carney says he learned about the VA in the media. And I begin to think, I want my president to have more information than I do. And that's when it begins to, because you can't make decisions unless you have good information.
Yeah. Well, this requires the president to be engaged and curious and active, and he's not. This president's got sort of a lazy attitude towards the job that he's got. For example, he goes a year without talking to President Karzai of Afghanistan. His predecessor talked to President Karzai frequently, several times a month. He went almost a year without talking to Prime Minister Maliki in Iraq. He has no relationship with him. He shows up late in the Oval Office. He has avoided, 60-some-odd% of his presidential daily briefs. He does not like to have the CIA brief him in person. He'd rather get a piece of paper. This is a president who is disengaged and not really involved and active in the job. There was a study recently on the number of phone calls and contacts he had with foreign leaders. I was astonished that the high point was in 2 months. I believe it was July of this year and November of 2012, where he had in each of those 2 months, 28 contacts with foreign leaders. That is a pitiful number. That's less than one a day. That is not what a normal president has to do over the course of their time in office. So I think there's a reason why the president looks detached and aloof and disengaged and sometimes caught completely unaware. It's because he's not doing his job. He's not throwing himself in there and working hard at it and asking questions and availing himself of the opportunities to dig into these meaty issues and find out what's going on and to stay in touch and do the things that we expect of a leader of the free world, dealing with our allies and partners around the world.
You missed one. You missed Capitol Hill. Even if he hates Boehner, he should be talking to Boehner more. He dispatches Biden up to talk to Boehner. And even if you look at, if we get these information from the White House all the time, who was making the calls to Maliki? It was Biden who was making the calls to Maliki and not him. So, it's like, he needs to be more of a fact finder himself.
Well, exactly. I'd say two things to that. First of all, you hit it absolutely right. Can you imagine if you're Karzai or Maliki and you're used to having a secure video conference a couple of times a month where George W. Bush looks you in the eye and says, what's going on? Here's what I'm concerned about. I need you to do better on this. Suddenly, then, you have no contact with the President of the United States and you're dealing with Joe Biden infrequently. The second issue is Congress, and you're right, and it's not just the Republicans. There was a New York Times article, I believe it was early last week, in which 8 Democratic members of the United States Senate, by name or by background, are quoted trashing the president for having little or no contact with him. He's not engaged in developing those kind of relationships. And look, it's difficult. It's hard. It requires a lot from a president. It's not just simply the formal meetings where you got to treat him with dignity and respect. It's the informal contact you have that allows you to develop these relationships.
It is hard, but he did ask for the job. Anyway, Karl, thank you.